Let's see how many books I think I can read in 1 week. Well, it's actually slightly less than 1 week. I have just got back from the airport after 12 days leading a humanitarian project in Romania, and so now I have the rest of this week off. So let's see how much I can read. First, I have got Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. This one I'm actually like 80–90% through. I started this one yesterday on audio. I got it on the library as well. So I have listened to actually most of it today. So it kind of counts in this, kind of doesn't. It's not on camera, but it's while I've been traveling home. So I'm hopefully going to finish this today. The book that I am most excited to start is The Reappearance of Rachel Price. I managed to get the Waterstones exclusive. I love Holly Jackson's books. I think they're brilliant. I always find them very captivating, and so I'm sure this will be the same. The next one I have is Close to Death by Anthony Horowitz. This is the 5th book that has just come out in the Hawthorne and Horowitz and Hawthorne series. If you watched my Mexico vlog, you'll have seen that James and I read the first 2 books in that. I started the 3rd one as we were leaving, but I never finished it, and then I actually got it on the library, and so I read the 3rd and the 4th, where I listened to them at the start of April, so that I could be ready for the release of Close to Death. The last book that I am not getting yet, but I may get this week, is Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I think I can probably finish the last of Check and Mate. So let's dive into it and see what happens. I have just finished Check and Mate. I only had about 20 or 30 pages, so it was pretty easy. I had heard some mixed reviews going into this before I started, and so I didn't really quite know what to expect. I did like listening to it on audio. I do agree with some of the kind of commentary I've heard that it is probably more of like a new adult book than a young adult book. I think like some of the themes and kind of talks about sex a lot, but on the whole I really liked it. I know next to nothing about chess, but I feel like I could pick things up pretty easily, and yeah, I'm just a sucker for some romance, and so yeah, on the whole really enjoyed it. I am about 30 pages into The Reappearance of Rachel Price. I have also downloaded Lynn Painter's new book, Happily Never After, on Audible. I'm going to listen to it tonight while I get ready for bed, and then hopefully have that going alongside as well. Good morning, it's Tuesday. Last night I listened to about an hour and a half of Happily Never After by Lynn Painter on Audible. So far I'm enjoying it. So for now I am going to just quickly read some more of The Reappearance of Rachel Price while I drink my coffee, and then I am going to get to all the tasks that I need to do. I have just finished Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. It is about 1 p.m. on Tuesday, and my mum is about to put me up, so this is just perfect timing. So I'm gonna head out with my mum and then hopefully be able to sit down and read some more of The Reappearance of Rachel Price later. Good morning, it is nearly 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and I am just sitting down with my cup of coffee to dive back into The Reappearance of Rachel Price. Yesterday ended up far more busy than I had kind of intended, and I ended up spending all afternoon out with my mum and my brother, so there was very little reading done. So for the next few hours I am just going to be binge reading The Reappearance of Rachel Price. Okay, so I had a slight mentee bee, took a nap, feeling a lot better, and now I am gonna go and treat myself and get a bagel and coffee for lunch and do some reading out, so let's go there. I'm here at Bodega Bagels in Belfast, which is so good.
The place is pretty empty, which is great. I have got my iced latte, my bagel and a cookie, and I'm gonna dive in and read my book. I am back from lunch and the works. I managed to pick up 3 books. So the one that I went in for was Wild Love by Elsie Silver. This is her newest release and it's like the offshoot of the Chestnut Springs series. So this was the one that I was most excited for, and I knew that the works would have it for $5.50. They only had 2 copies, both of which were damaged, and it meant that it was only $3.50. So that was handy. The other 2 books I picked up were The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. I think I have talked about Rebecca Yarros's romance books before. I actually really like them. I much prefer them to her fantasy, and I actually rated her book. I've totally forgotten what it is now. Oh my gosh, what was that book called? In the Likely Event. I read it back in September and absolutely loved it. And this, I think, is the last one of her like romances that I haven't read. I nearly picked it up on Kindle the other day because I think it was only 99p, but this was $2.50. I don't like the cover as much as other ones I've seen, but it was $2.50, so I'm willing to forsake that. And the last book that I picked up that I was not expecting to at all was Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. I read Out on a Limb back in September. I read it in Mexico, so you can see that in that Mexico vlog. And I've heard great things about Next of Kin, and now that they've been traditionally published, it was only $2.50. So I thought it would be worth giving it a go. I am currently about 140 pages through The Reappearance of Rachel Price. It's really hard with mysteries, I find, especially to kind of not give away what's going on. But basically the premise of the book, which it says from the start, is that this is about our main character Belle, and when she was 2, her mum went missing, and then they start doing this documentary series about it, and right in the middle of that she comes back. Hence the reappearance of Rachel Price. And some things just aren't adding up. On the whole, really enjoying it so far. So let's dive in and read some more. Good morning, it's Thursday and my morning is off to a bit of a rocky start. I got in the car to go to the gym for the 9:30 CrossFit class and the car wouldn't start. And if you know us personally, you know that we have been having quite a bit of car trouble recently. Our car is very old. That's fine, that doesn't really bother me, but we have been having quite a lot of trouble with it recently. So I feel like my whole day is like up in the air now. Last night when I got into bed, I started Wild Love by Elsie Silver. I'm smiling about this book already. It is just so classic Elsie Silver. I'm so glad this damaged book didn't actually bother me once I started reading, and I am already about 70 pages in. It is one of those books that is just so easy to get into. Elsie Silver writes so easily and so well. The premise of the book is basically we are following Ford, who is brother to Willa from Heartless, the second book in the Chestnut Springs series. So this is her brother Ford, who is our main character and who has been recently dubbed as world's hottest billionaire. And then our female main character is Rosie, who is Ford's best friend's sister. I'm only 70 pages in, but so far this man is an Elsie Silver man and I am here for it. So let's dive in and read some more. It is about 4:15 and I have just finished Wild Love by Elsie Silver. My gut reaction on this book is that I loved it. Honestly, Elsie Silver puts something in these books. As with most of her books, I find they're just a little bit too sexually explicit for me, and so I will take a little bit off my rating for that. But on the whole, I love the way she writes romance. I love the way she writes connection between two characters. It may be open to change, but my first reaction for this book is like a 4.75, which is pretty perfect. As with a lot of kind of fiction romances, there's some stuff that if it was to actually happen in real life might be a bit cringe or awkward.
And obviously when you have kind of like a billionaire and a normal person, there's always going to be a dynamic at play that you just don't really see in the real world. On the whole, a big thumbs up for me. I demolished this. And so it's another win from Elsie Silver for me. Our car is still not working and there's a lot to do here in the house. So my next steps are to just put my headphones in and do a bit of tidying, maybe listen to an audiobook I started same time next summer by Annabel Monaghan. I think she's the same person that wrote Nora Goes Off Script, which I really liked when I listened to it, and so I'm gonna put that on the background. So far I'm 15% into that and have no real thoughts on it. It is a couple of days later. The last few days have been so busy, which is very like us. Today I'm not super well, and so the last few days have also been a little bit harder, a little bit slower. Since we last spoke, I have finished Close to Death, the 5th in the Hawthorne Horowitz series. I think this is potentially one of my favourites so far, but I will say I really didn't like the ending, which is a bit anticlimactic for a mystery book. But basically I think the mystery itself was one of the most intelligent to date. I think it's just so smart the way Anthony Horowitz writes this, because you've kind of got this dynamic that he is writing but he is also in the book. So the first few, you kind of see him making a lot of like the amateur assumptions and amateur mistakes, even though he is a crime writer. But this one I think really played into kind of some of the assumptions and leadings that I was convinced was one thing, James was convinced was another thing, and then both of those came up late stages and were disproved, which was so fun. I feel like right until the end I was like, I don't really know which way I'm looking. So very smart. The thing I didn't like is that it kind of just sets it up for another book. So we've kind of over the last 4 books been developing this relationship between Hawthorne and Horowitz, and starting to see more, especially of Daniel Hawthorne's personality and character. But we didn't see loads in this one, and it sets it up. He says in the acknowledgements he has the plot for another 7 books. But sometimes I'm confused between what is reality and what is this like fantasy world where like stuff is kind of real but also it's kind of not. So on the whole, is it worth the read? Absolutely. It's one of my favourites in this series so far. So in this video we have so far covered Checkmate by Ellie Hazelwood, Happily Never After by Lynn Painter, Wild Love by Elsie Silver, wow, all the romances, and Close to Death by Anthony Horowitz. I am still working on the reappearance of Rachel Price. I'm 177 pages in and I'm just like struggling to connect. I'm not feeling like I want to binge read it with Wild Love and Happily Never After. I just binged those. But this one, I'm getting like a bit bored after every chapter. I go to set it down. That might also just be illness, but today it's a slightly sunnier day. I'm going to utilise my lunch break and go outside and read for a while and see if I can kind of dive into this more. I feel like we're right on the precipice of kind of something being blown wide open, and I think when that happens it will start to feel a lot more fast-paced. So let's go and sit out in the sun and do a little bit of reading. With the irony being that because it's Northern Ireland, sitting out in the sun means that I've got a thermal base layer and a hoodie on, and I'm probably going to take a hot cup of coffee out there as well. It is another couple of days later. You know, back to work. It is really hard to squeeze in a lot of reading when you're working full time. I picked up the reappearance of Rachel Price on Audible a couple of nights ago, and so I've probably listened to equivalent of about 150 pages on that. And so I think I have about 30-ish pages left, and so I'm gonna sit down and try and demolish this last little bit in one sitting now. I am glad that I picked it up on audio. I think it helped me like kind of get into it, and ironically pretty much the chapter that I started listening to, something massive happened. So hopefully if I had been physically reading it I would have been like bought in the same way I expected to be, but I definitely did do that on audio. I will save all of my thoughts for in 30 minutes time when I finally finish this book and I can give you some more of my thoughts. I have finally finished the reappearance of Rachel Price. It really didn't take me that long in the grand scheme of things, but when you're trying to record a video, 10 days felt like a long time. Maybe I just need to sit on this book a bit longer, but my gut instinct is a little bit meh. I think I had such high expectations because I've loved all Holly Jackson's previous books, but I think I found this book very long and drawn out. It feels like I kind of thought we were going in like 15 different directions, and then something major would happen. I'd be like, wow, what a revelation. And then there'd be another one, and another one, and another one. And so I feel like we almost had like 5 books in one. And for only being 430 pages, it did a lot of different things. On the whole, I do think the plot was good, but I just think it was a little bit convoluted at times. And I think the first like nearly 200 pages just didn't really do anything. I was looking out for a whole bunch of things that maybe like didn't make sense or could lead suspicion in a certain direction, but then I feel like so much stuff happened and it didn't do anything. And I think after just reading Close to Death by Anthony Horowitz, where it also had a bunch of little hints, and maybe I thought, oh, it's going in that direction, but then it didn't, but it addresses that it's not going in that direction and is like, ha, you thought we were going here, but actually this was just to throw you off the scent. And it actually talked about it, whereas I feel like there's a bunch of stuff that were just never really resolved and we're just left as like vague lies, which is a bit weird. I'm not fully settled on a rating for this book yet, but it's probably in around a 3. Not quite a 3.5, which was like, I enjoyed it, but not quite as bad as a 2 point something, which feels like I didn't like it. Overall, I think the way this book was laid out was smart but convoluted. And maybe because of the pacing of it, it would be just generally better on audio. But on the whole, not a bad book at all. Just not particularly my fave after I've had a pretty good reading month in April. So wrapping up, we read 5 books in this video. Firstly, we started with Check and Mate, which I've already returned to the library, so I don't have a physical copy of that. And I rated that a 3.75. Next up was Happily Never After by Lynn Painter, and I listened to that on Audible and gave it a 3.5. Next up was Wild Love by Elsie Silver, and I rated that a 4.5. Then we had Close to Death by Anthony Horowitz, and I rated that a 4.25. And lastly, we had The Reappearance of Rachel Price, which I've just finished, by Holly Jackson, and I think I'm going to settle on like a 3.0, 3.25 for this book. Some other noteworthy reads that I have read recently are The Rule Book by Sarah Adams and Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez, which so good. Just for the Summer, I rated an absolute 5-star. I thought it was so brilliant. She writes characters with substance that you love and that are just brilliant. And so it is not all light and fluffy, but I think it is totally worth the read. So I highly recommend it. If you have any other recommendations for reads, let me know in the comments. As always, you can find me over on Kate's Literature on Instagram, and I'll see you soon.